Thumbs up. So I think we are live. I'm gonna wait to hear confirmation from chat that they can hear me, and then we will get this show started. So once you can confirm that you can hear me and everything comes good, let me know. No, can't hear a thing. All right. All right. I guess Giblix gets the clever viewer of the day award. We should have an award for that. Hello, Buyan. How you doing today?
I am great. Can't wait to talk a bit more about the world and
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, we got a good stream today. We're gonna show some. I'll say live gameplay. We're gonna do some in-game new footage today. We're gonna walk through the map from the dev diary. We're talking about story and quests and a whole bunch of cool stuff. We have Bouillon, we have Rado, we have a good show. So it should be a pretty good time. I know that everyone over there at Hemimont, you guys are plugging away at this imminent release date. So I imagine it's quite busy. So I appreciate you having the time to come over and talk with us today.
Yeah, it's quite a rush right now, but it's very exciting because we finally have the ability to show the game and get everybody's reaction on how things have turned out.
Yeah, soon we're gonna have to just do a live playthrough during one of these streams. We're getting
Oh,
close to the
yeah.
point where it may be time to watch me fumble through Ernie Island as an intro. Um,
It's going to be
I,
a fun time.
I'm curious how much you will judge me when I finally play the game live in front of the audience.
We'll just start you on the hardest difficulty with everybody's dead if they die. It's going to be great.
Oh, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to do an Iron Man run.
I have a new challenge actually that we are playing right now in the office, which is win the game with a single merc on the hardest difficulty with no weapons equipped. So unarmed combat only.
Oh my! So weren't you were doing the melee only run? Are you still trying to do that, or did that experiment fail?
No, it was quite fun. I managed to go. I didn't win the final fights because I switched to a new combat with shotguns and pistols, and everybody rushes in very close and tries to blast from close range, and it's quite fun right now as well. The melee thing was very fun, very dangerous at times because as I had my from my point of view, very overpowered squad. At one point, I went into a sector and there were these two enemies with machine guns, and I set up overwatches, and all of my mercs got hit all the time. It was a bloodbath.
Oh boy. Well, I mean that's part of the challenge though, trying to figure out how to deal with those different circumstances.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, and there's a lot of the combat encounters that challenge your play style as well as where you compound that with the weather effects. I just
Yeah.
played something with heavy rain, and I'm always trying to aim at the maximum possible level, but rain obstructs aiming, and it's very different way to approach the game. So it's interesting to have your playstyle challenged from time to time.
I'd be curious about a stealth only run. Hey, Fry TQ. Wolverine is that saying, I hope I can do a stealth only run at some point. I would imagine doing stealth only the whole time would be tricky though. You can do a lot of stealth initiation, but I imagine a couple encounters you wouldn't be able to do pure stealth. Or could you?
Actually, we had one of the testers go to one of the final encounters, sneak by every enemy, go and do one of the final objectives, and leave without actually alerting the enemies. So that was even possible. It was
Wow.
quite. And we actually didn't even go and, okay, we were going to fix that. We are actually giving you an acknowledgement that you managed to do that right now. So everybody's going to clap for, like, wow, well done. But it's
So I
very,
guess
very hard to do.
that kind of ties to your whole one merc unarmed run idea, right? It would be a lot of stealth takedowns, a lot of not getting discovered in the more complicated mission. Okay, all right. That sounds like a fun challenge, actually.
Yeah, definitely stealth is more enjoyable with a smaller party size because you get to focus more on individual movements and positioning. When you
Yeah.
have full squad or even multiple squads, it gets a bit more chaos. A lot of not everybody is good at stealth, so they get discovered at different moments. I try to do it with 3 or 4 mercs squad that's very stealthy going in at night time, so they get even better chances to go through and stealth kill everybody. It's possible. It's difficult.
Yep. Suppose Pope PPO, welcome to the stream. Giblets, all you need is 3 rocket launchers and 1 sniper to clean up those who you missed. That's true. The rocket launchers, I mean, it's always fun to blow things up, especially because you can deform the terrain and do all of the building collapsing. However, we are everyone's and by the way, please ask questions and talk. We're way off topic though, so let's go ahead and zoom this back in. We will do more random conversation near the end of the stream. Today we're talking about quests and our quest creation, and quests are interesting for us because it's and Rado, our lead narrative designer, is on a little bit later to talk a little bit more about the mechanics of how we create quests and build worlds. But I think what's interesting about our quest design and how we're approaching it is really that vision for what we're doing. So maybe a good place to start, and I know we have a lot of Jagged Alliance 2 experts in the chat, but maybe a good place to start is kind of where do we draw our inspiration from Jagged Alliance 2 and what were our design goals for Quest and Jagged Alliance 3?
Yeah, so of course, Jagged Alliance was the template for what we are doing, and Jagged Alliance 2 in particular, well, it was a great tactical game. It had a very good strategic element, but the full blend also included this sense of a real living world, an open world you could explore, and this feeling that your actions in the world didn't matter. So it managed to do a lot to bring this feeling with very few quests back then, but all of those quests allowed for a lot of different interactions and different ways to approach these quests. So ultimately, our design goals when starting Jagged Alliance 3 for the quests, I would even say stories more rather than tasks and quests, was to
Yeah.
to tell the story of the world, the people living in this world, the different locations, how these people are affected by different the situation on the in Grand Chien, the different events that are taking place throughout the story as well. Secondly, we wanted to give the player different ways to approach these stories. Ultimately, you are here to rescue the president. You have a goal, and that's you're the mercenary. You are paid to do that, and the different stories that you witness, you don't always have to participate in those. You can go observe, decide whether you want to take part in this, or do you want to stay on the site and just watch what's happening. Or
Yeah,
when yeah.
I'm gonna jump in. I see a number of people saw the Doreen quest screenshot from Jag 2 up on there, and Fru Bayon says it's International Child Protection Day. So
Oh yes, wow! On the June the 1st, yes, that's a great day to actually show that screenshot.
yeah,
So that's
I love it.
so Doreen's actually in Jagged Alliance 2. That's one of the early sort of stories you can encounter. It doesn't again feel like a quest. It's just something you encounter on one of the maps. It's a sweatshop that's making T-shirts with different prints. Actually, and this lady is actually abusing child labor to make all of the T-shirts and getting all of the profits. And you just go into a random building and you see the situation there. You can talk to the children, they just say one-liners, and you have different approaches to what you want to do. I usually just go in gun blazings and I take her out, because not only do you free the children, but you get some extra cash in her safety box. So
yeah,
it's always, you do free the children as well as get some money for it. But if you have a very skilled mercenary, somebody with good leadership, you can actually convince Doreen to close the factory and stop working. So you actually do have a peaceful way to resolve this situation. And
yeah.
giving you these options is important to feel that there are different ways to approach how you tackle stories and events in the world. And
Yeah,
another, yeah.
I see a lot of people asking about the co-op gameplay moment. Maybe Bouillon and I will play a co-op match at some point
Oh
in
yeah,
time. That would be
definitely.
fun. I could co-op with Bouillon. Um, you can do melee only, and I'll do snipers and rockets. I feel like there's a big element that you're touching on here that really is about the core of what we were trying to get across in our vision for how we tell stories and how quests work in Jagged Alliance 3, which is we really wanted to limit. I mean, you can't remove it completely because it's just part of things that you do in games like this, but we really wanted to minimize that go here, fetch this, return that kind of quest style. And I know in the early prototypes when we were first like doing our original vertical slice many years ago, we did have some of that just as an initial structure, just to get used to how the world was going to be put together and how you were going to interact with NPCs. But it's been an active goal to, I mean, I don't want to say remove it, but try to be more creative, like how you described the Dorian Jagged Alliance 2 quest. And that's been very important to us.
Yes, and of course you're always gonna have elements that feel like a bit more fetchy. But I have a very good example. For example, when you liberate one of the early towns in Jagged Alliance 3, there's this guy who is asking you to fortify the town against the Legion, and he basically asks you for a machine gun so they can set up a defensive position. And
Yeah, yeah.
you can go find a machine gun. You can find machine gun multiple ways, but there's one in a particular place that somebody else mentions in the world. And there's this choice: do I give this machine gun? Because actually, having this machine gun this early on for yourself when you are assaulting a heavily fortified position after that, it's useful. But you could also give it to the people of Ernie Village and help them protect themselves and have a bit of a stronger position when you're defending the village from attacks from the enemies.
Yeah, and it also kind of introduces some of that early concepts of the militia and how powerful the militia is and how that handles because there's I mean as everyone knows from previous streams there is the strategy layer. We do have satellite view where you're controlling one or more squads and you have the different antagonists moving around and doing different things and also assaulting or trying to recapture villages from you and mines and whatnot. So having it kind of introduces you to the concept of how well those sectors are defended and how well armed and well trained those forces are at different sector locations. They can resist some of the forces that try to attack them there, or even jump in and help you if you're doing a combat encounter there. So there's some interesting dynamics that we introduce you with that. What I love about that particular story or quest you're talking about though is if for example, if you have Fidel in your squad and you try and you go give the machine gun back, he actually chirps at you and says, why are you giving, I mean, give me the gun. I love gun. And I like that he actually does get a little mad with you that you're giving away these great weapons. And if you do that if you do that too often, Phil would actually want to leave your party and become a little more resistant to being hired or just not be with you at all. So it's an interesting kind of one of those things where as you make those decisions, you are doing them, but there's multiple layers to the impact. It's not just turn in quest, get reward. There's different dynamics on how your squad is built and the personalities of that, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, I love that line from Fiddle. It's like, gun is living, bye bye gun.
Yeah, bye bye
It's one
gun.
of, it's one of my favorites. Yeah.
And I will say it's one of the reasons, and I know we talked about this recently in a different stream, but it's one of the reasons why we have the non-quest tracker. Right? We do notes instead of quest tracking, so it actually makes the way that you discover things a lot more organic, and you get notes about where things are. I don't want to go too deep into that because we've talked about it before, but that's another thing. By the way, Ruby Rubel, nice to see you as well. And yeah, July is gonna no pressure, Bouillon. It was funny. We were doing prep for the call, and I was actually in a UI, and I found like two or three things where I'm like, oh, we have some things we got to work and polish. So July's gonna come fast. We can't wait, but we also I hope it comes as slow as possible so we can get all the time we. Um, so, anyways, let's move on a little bit because I want to talk about there's a couple different ways that we primarily interact or how players primarily interact with the world. So I know that we talk about this, and by the way, I don't know if I plugged this before. There is a hey Spine Duke. Oh hey, good to see you. You were here on the last one. There is a couple. By the way, Spine Duke says hello to you as well, Bouillon. There are a couple ways that you interact with the world, and we go through all of this in our dev diary. So if you haven't had a chance to read the dev diary, it's at community.jaggedalliance.com. We put all of our dev diaries there. We take questions from there. It's a good place to interact with the community. So you can go read everything in detail that we're covering as well on text there. So the two ways you interact with the world are banters and conversations. Those are kind of the main ways that you get information from the world. Let's start out with banters first. So what are banters?
So our technical term is banters. It's basically one-liners, or it's not one-liners, but voiced text that different characters say, which doesn't break the gameplay. So it goes while you are exploring or while you are in combat. Somebody will say something. There may be a conversation that's happening between multiple people. But the main help of these two is that it doesn't break the flow of the game. You could be just walking around the village and you see a couple of villagers talking about something, and it's contextual and gives us a great ability to add more specific information based on the context. And for example, while you've let's say you've trained militia in Ernie village, you can hear the militia talking between themselves and discuss like how hard it is to fire a gun without properly loading it or having the safety on. That's a funny conversation. You can even hear enemies talking. If you try the stealth approach and go in, you can hear an enemies and you can overhear important information, which can give you certain notes in the notes section that help you locate a certain story or quest, or help you resolve a quest as well. And
Yeah,
that's the
like
big.
sometimes the banters also reflect what you've been doing. So if you're really good to a certain village or a certain sector, sometimes they'll respond to you when you're walking around. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the old school Fable interactions where you'd walk around. They're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
hey, good you." You get a little bit of that texture when you're walking around and exploring the world, which I think is really nice. And I really like the that walking around even non village maps. Hearing the enemies talk back and forth, and that also maybe. Or even maybe not enemies yet, right? Like there are a couple of things we talked about where you have some there's decisions that you can make in certain areas that may create an ally or create an enemy based on what you do, and you may sneak or hide and maybe manipulate them in the conversation because now you have a note about what's going on, and that information allows you to um, have a little bit of a different interaction when you actually go into a conversation. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and just another tiny addition. And what's even cooler is that some of your mercs can chime in occasionally and respond to some of the banters. So if you're playing with a different party, you may hear something that you've heard from a previous playthrough, but this time some of the mercs comment, and there's at least something funny or interesting more to discover.
Yeah. Now this kind of connects to the other major system, which are conversations. And oh, hold on, there was a packet loss. Yeah, I think we were having a little bit. I saw a quality dip for a second. It's gotta love Discord. Yeah, sometimes everything works smooth, and sometimes you get a few minutes of and then it comes back. So I think that's just good old internet. So the other aspect of this, which is a lot more interactive, is the conversations, which is that's when you're actually using the dialogue system and interacting with NPCs more directly.
Yeah, so conversations, when you go to and talk to an important NPC, we wanted to give you the option to explore different topics and ask certain questions, get more information, and have again the mercenaries chime in and share their opinion on it. It was an interesting process of coming up with the conversation system because first in the Jagged Alliance 2, actually the system was a bit let's say a bit strange. You could talk to different NPCs and you had a set of fixed keywords. They were the same keywords always. It was like you can go friendly, you can threaten, you can do certain specific special actions, but it limited. It basically it was hard to define what happened in the conversation and understand what explicitly you are trying to say when just clicking a generic keyword.
Yeah.
So we explored various different options, but we have one big difficulty that was a problem initially. We have a very huge cast of characters, so we can't do the typical RPG approach of like saying a specific line, which is what you actually hear when you click on the line. There are 40 mercenaries. We don't know which characters are going to be in the conversation. We can't record everything. So we have different keywords, but these are specific to the conversation, which you can use. And when you click on a phrase, the mercenaries might chime in or they might not. It depends on the specific conversation, but it gives you this feeling this is a conversation with this specific NPC. It's not something generic that you see every time.
Yeah, there was a couple comments here. I love suppose PPO saying that Kai clearly gets headshotted, which is the headshot interaction. And if you noticed on the one with Granny, there was actually a Buns is in the squad in that particular screenshot sequence, and Buns has an observation, and she allows you to do a specific dialogue choice. So you get those different options based on who's in your part or who's in your squad when you interact with an NPC, and some of them are based on perks like Fidel's Psycho perk, which can trigger certain options or other different perks or individual uniquenesses. So it's a cool combination there of how those different things interact. I do want to take one random question that I saw from chat, which is kind of someone was asking if we have microtransactions in the game. No, there's no plans for microtransactions in Jagged Alliance 3. There is we aren't announcing any kind of post-release ideas about like DLC or something like that, but there's no in-game shop where you're buying things. It's a traditional box product game. It's going to sell for a flat rate on the Steam store, and then you get to experience the entire content set. So there's no plans and there's no implementation for anything like that. Like I said, we may do, and obviously our goal is and hope is to support the Jagged Alliance 3 game for a long time. We have a lot of cool ideas for DLC. We're all focused right now on getting the game done, so that's where our efforts are. But once that's passed, then we'll there's a lot of ideas for how we could offer additional stuff down the road. But that's not going to be in the form of a in-game shop or any kind of microtransactions. So absolutely not.
Yeah, no microtransactions, but there's a funny joke about microtransactions in the game.
Well, there's lots of funny jokes all throughout. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Now, I think that it's also important to kind of say that the goal here with the way that conversations work was to add, we can't add. It's not like old school adventure games where you can free type in all of your responses, right? We have to have a little bit of a guided approach so that we can make good content and record VO and all that good stuff. But the no Bobby Ray gun shop in game. Well, I'm not going to say what is or isn't. So there's but I think that there's a balance between allowing the content to be as robust as it can be, and then giving the player a lot of freedom and choice with consequences of those choices. And I think that the combination of banters that happen organically and responsive, and conversations that are also, have story-driven dynamics to them, but still reflect both what you've done up until now and who's with you when you make a decision, and what information that you know through notes or other information you've gathered. Trying to make that feel very organic. That was a big goal for us, and how these stories come together and how these conversation interactions go. And that's kind of a big underpinning to the whole quest system. And I'll give one example of that. There may be what you would consider a quest giver in a certain location and an objective to that quest, but you also, because the game is somewhat open world, may go and get the objective before you've met the quest giver. So there's a lot of opportunities there for the freedom of choice and how you explore the world to shift how you interact with those stories. And I really like that. I think it's really cool because you meet someone that's in a bad situation and they're like, "Oh my gosh, help me!" And then you go to another town and they're like, "Thank you for help. I heard you did this." As opposed to if you went to that place first, they'd be like, "Hey, can you help me with this thing? I'm missing something, or I've lost someone I care about, or whatever." And then you actually go and try to find them. So the way those things can happen in different orders, and I think that really reflects the way we want the quest system to feel and work.
Yeah, definitely. And something that's very important also in part of the design goals was actually having the consequences of your choices and decisions while participating in different stories. So sometimes these consequences will have an effect, or you will see the results much later in the game. Sometimes when you go back to a sector or location, you will see results that are like months ago in game time. And even when at the end of the game you see different results based on what you managed to do. How did you help the people? Did you hinder them? Were you just doing your job? So you leave a very big footprint on the world.
I see a lot of people in chat commenting on their love for Bobby Ray. So I guess Bobby Ray is a big fan favorite. Um, but is it before we bring Rado out here? Beyond, do you have anything else you want to comment on the quest system, or are you ready just to move on to?
I can give you a small something small that's in addition to banters and conversations. Something we often use is just
Okay.
interactions with the world in general and different objects in the world, making you able to go and explore and see what's interesting in the world itself. And sometimes these interactions are very customized. For example, there's this beach from one of the locations. There's a nice sandman made by one of the locals, and you can go and search around and examine it. The local will actually comment on it, and it turns out that it's trapped with a booby trap. You can disarm it, or it can actually even explode, and there are different comments, and characters can also chime in. So this is the type of interaction and small side story that you can expect to see in the world.
By the way, Hawk 402, ha ha ha. Hawk 402 said 1999 franchise, 1999 internet connection. I dare you to find a time in 1999 where you could stream multiple real-time videos in HD. But yeah, lols, I get it. It's funny. Yeah, it's fitting. You're right. You know, we do we do so much prep for these streams, and we try to get everything stable. But you know, the internet is just going to be the internet. And it's all good. So, thank you very much, Buyan. Let's bring Rado out here. We'll have you back for questions near the end. And while they are changing, I will kind of see if I can grab a question. Someone asked if we're working on DLC after release for more merc sectors and voice output translations. You know, we're like I said, and being honest with you, right now we are 100% focused on. Is Rado coming, Buyan? I see you just.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just switching.
Okay. We're focused on the game right now. Polish, bug fixing, quality. You know, that's where our head's at. So, nothing on DLC plans quite yet. We haven't even really begun, aside from some brainstorming. You know, thought about how that would work at the moment because we want to get the game to be the best it can be. So, once we get past release, then we will talk about that and go from there. Rado, welcome again. How are you?
Wonderful. Hello, everyone.
You were, I think, on dev stream number 2. So if everyone doesn't remember Rado, senior narrative designer, he was on a stream back in I think the second one we did, talking about story and whatnot. Trollmaster.
Oh no, you're too nice to me.
Right. How have you been? How are you doing?
Wonderful. Exterminating some last Polish issues and talking to testers because it seems that there are still things in the game they haven't yet found. Imagine.
Really? So you're just kind of watching to see if they stumble upon something, or
I'm smug. I'm smug all the time because there are Easter eggs and whatnot. Sometimes just a one-liner makes a story or changes it.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's I know people are always hungry for more mercs, and I saw Jimmy Lee's comment there. One of the challenges we have, though, Jimmy Lee, like Rado was just hinting at, is that there's so much content for each merc. A lot of voiceover lines. I mean, the game is a large game. There's a lot of story, a lot of dynamic content. So adding a merc is not a small amount of effort. It really does impact every aspect and all of the game. So the mercs that are in there, I would respectfully disagree. I think for a game of this scope and scale, I think 40 mercs is pretty darn impressive, just with how much they respond to the world. But it's always good to add more. So I understand the desire to see more people there. So uh, yeah, I mean, Jimmy Lee, we don't want to stop working on the game after release. So that's um, Bleon and I were talking about the vision and structure for our quest system and our stories, and now we're going to talk about kind of the deep dive into the details. And I think we're going to focus on Port Cacao docks as our discussion point. That was the area that you had picked for the dev diary.
Yeah, because there's a lot going on there. There are lots of potential spoilers, and I'll try to avoid them. Because there are several major ways of how things can go from there, and it's related to other sectors as well. What you do there might help you elsewhere, and vice versa.
Yeah, definitely. So why don't we do this? Why don't you? I actually have the game running on my machine, and I think we're going to switch to screen share. And then while I'm doing, maybe you can give us a quick brief of kind of. And I'm not going to click on anything. I'm not going to actually play too much. So I don't want to. This is a mid-game map, so the potential for spoilers is real. But I'm going to mouse the camera around, and I'll walk around a little bit, and we'll show a little bit of live gameplay here. So if you want to go ahead and turn the screen share on, and once I see it up there, I'll start exploring a little bit. Remember, guys, I'm just going to show a little bit because again, I don't want to spoil too much. Once the camera over, I'm waiting for my producer thumbs up that we have the screen share going. I hear thumbs up. All right, cool. So, Rado, maybe you can do a little bit of a description about what Port Docs is.
Yeah. Well, imagine, first of all, this is the region center. Grand Chien is a bigger country, and we're part of the Ajani region, which is rich in diamonds, natural riches of other kinds. But its inhabitants are poor, and they're the remains of fishing industry and whatnot that are not very not in working order anymore. Those people, they are living however they can in this poor, war-ridden, destroyed country. Uh, and you're not someone they meet with open arms, because you're just another group of people with guns. You see, you can see the one of the storage buildings, and can you go to the docks and show the barges and everything?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you see, there people are making some kind of living there, and the those ships are out of commission now. People have built their houses on them. Sometimes ships are sinking. Well, that's a major issue, but people have to make a living somewhere somehow. It's much like I've noted that as a source of inspiration in the Dev Diary, Tortilla Flat by Steinbeck. Uh, it's one of my favorites. That kind of place, which is crazy because everyone's so poor, they don't give a merde.
So when we start talking about an area like this, and I'm gonna let it play while we're talking. I'm not gonna again. I can't do too much here because this is not early on in the game, so I don't want to accidentally show something that would ruin something for people on the stream. Usually we'll stream earlier parts of the game so we don't risk spoiling anything for you. How do you approach building out these areas and like getting the space constructed in your head before you start writing these quests and creating these quests?
Well, you start with the characters and stories, and you have a broad picture of stories in your head. You're like, okay, there will be these people here. They have this gig, this problem, or this issue, and you will become part of it in some way. Because while writing content for the game, especially earlier, we discovered that you need to have something to start with. Because if you just go to a random NPC and that NPC just starts telling you their life story, this is not convincing. And it cannot lead to good writing, no matter how good a writer you are.
Yeah, I think
So
you said I can
we're
actually talk.
trying.
one of the
Mhm.
grannies shouldn't spoil anything, right? If I talk to old
Mm.
Vinny.
Yeah, go on.
Order accepted.
So you start with a situation normally, and you set up that situation as in terms of level design. Sometimes you set it up with a little bit later, which is the case here, and sometimes. Yeah, I love that one. So imagine you're a bunch of mercenaries, and you're talking with someone uh, who's making fun of you because you're a bunch of mercenaries. You're not a real gang. But at the same time, you learn something about the world. There was that gang, which was or still is important to the area, and that gives you some background. And later on, when you speak to the NPCs, you'll be able to ask them something about that gang, if they care. I mean, in conversation, of course. And that's one of the key things. People don't care about everything. They have their own agenda. They care about what's important for them. So if you ask the full-mouthed old lady who is kind of looking like those old ladies you're talking to, perhaps you will learn a bit more about the gang
Yeah, Rado,
if you ask.
I gotta
Mm-hmm,
jump in. So,
mm-hmm,
I don't know if all of you guys caught the MD reaction to the conversation right there. That was hilarious, and I love. I didn't. That's what's fun about these different interactions, even though they're subtle. You get the different personality chime-ins, which are
mm,
great. So, um, uh, in the sorry, I was kind of you were going off on the different interactions with the way the gangs are populated.
mm,
So, one thing we were talking about before was the different types of interactions that you can have with people, and there were two main characters that you discussed in the dev diary that you have conversations with, and I think they're actually over here. I don't think I can talk to them, but we have Headshot, Hugh, and Lurch. Right? Can you tell us a little bit more about these
mm,
two guys?
mm. You can safely talk to Lurch. He won't reveal much.
Oh, right, right. So for anyone who didn't read the dev diary, what is the history behind these guys before I start talking to him? So well, I'll just talk to him. We'll see it happen.
Oh yeah, he's convincing, is he?
Yeah.
So when you talk to them, to the other guy, of course, who's rather more talkative, you learn the story. Both of them were headhunters, and they did some governmental contracts. That's actually a fact. In some African countries, they do that. They still do that sometimes. They give to private contractors and mercs things like law enforcement because the military or the law enforcement cannot handle that. So, in this country, there were headhunters back at the time until the Legion appeared, the new uh, ubiquitous force that is like everywhere and overpowerful. But back in the day, those guys were the top of the top. And now they're just remnants of their old glory, just as the gang is not in its top shape. And there's that joke with the name of the bar. Bar, everyone calls it the I bar because the barman says only I. That's what he can do. But if you pay close attention to the sign of the bar, the can you show it?
It's right there.
Yeah, yeah. It was like Rye bar, but the R is now silent. It's not lighted anymore. So it just supports the joke by the means of level design. And you see that, and you see part of the story. It's backed by the things you see in view.
One of the fun parts about having a narrative designer on a stream is that they will talk about everything. So, Radomir, I love you, my friend. I want to get to the point of the question we were asking originally, though,
Mm,
which is why he only says I. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to the end of it. So basically, the story of these
mm,
two characters is that both of them got shot in the head, and
mm.
both somehow
Right.
survived. So, the one guy here who just says I, that's kind of his he's still alive, he still does things, he runs a bar, but he was shot in the head, and that's all he can say. And then his friend Headshot Hugh, who also survived getting shot in the head, can talk a little bit more. And as some of you already were, and by the way, someone said that they thought you sounded like Elliot as a voice actor. Your voice sounds like
Oh
Elliot
boy.
from
Oh no.
yeah.
Oh no. You're a horrible person.
I
Okay.
end up like Elliot though, but there's an homage. There's a little bit of tip of the hat to that Jagged Alliance 2 Plotland, because I think there may have been someone from Jag 2 who also got shot and survived, much to his queen's dismay. So there's some interesting tie-ins, all the bring these things together and just kind of have a little tip of the hats, and that's part of the world building process. So I imagine when you're kind of and as people can see from you talking, like there's a lot that you think through when it comes to even like naming the bar I bar, but having it be Rye and based on the character. So I mean, how much documentation do you produce just in one area when you're trying to go through and like write the dialogue and everything?
Well, it's hard to calculate all the stuff because there's like several pages document about level design, 20
Hmm.
pages document about content, including the content, and then a bunch of tasks for everyone that is involved in the stuff. And that's just the tip of the iceberg because afterwards you just make changes. You don't always have the time to update the documentation. That's a sin, but it happens. And there's a lot. You have to do it because there should be a written line following your work. You
How
have to
much
get back and
like I
explain.
think in the diary you said something like 16 plus pages just in dialogue for
Mm.
one area, just for one area.
Not per area, per sector, usually.
Sector.
Each
Right.
sector is, I mean, the big sectors, of course, they are, we call them filler sectors, which are small. So we have city sectors and major sectors that are somehow important to the story or have multiple NPCs. We have filler sectors which are normally serve as a background. They are interesting in terms of combat, for example, and they still sometimes have small interactables or something to discover or just loot or just herbs. There's a lot to find. We want to motivate you to discover stuff in the game,
Yes, of
to go
course.
on all in and to immerse yourself into the game and try stuff.
I know that a lot of people in the dev diary conversation were a big fan of this lady over here, Granny Co. Can I talk to her safely, or is that going to be a risk?
uh, I think you can talk to her. You won't reveal much.
Okay, I don't want to risk it. I know we have some screenshots of it. We can go ahead and stop sharing the gameplay screens. I don't want to. I've already shown a little bit. And by the way, a few people mentioned that the audio was low. Yeah, we kept the audio for the game low on purpose. I didn't want to stumble
Mm.
upon something. It wasn't balanced for actually like traditional streaming, so it was just to show you the visuals. We'll do another stream later on where we actually properly balance the in-game stuff and are not just talking over it. We want to just have it as some background. But yeah, so Granny Kahani is definitely carrying some weapons, and she is an arms dealer in the town, and she was an old part of the original gang that kind of ran this sector, from what I understand. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
What's
There
her?
are a few
A lot of
intertwined
people,
stories about them.
a lot of people are wanting to recruit her. They're really excited about her. So what is her story a little bit here?
Well, you can't recruit her, but you can get her on her good side and could actually help her gather the old gang together. Because there will be a major event that will follow. I won't go into detail about that, but it might be enough to motivate those old grannies and aunties to get back together because they didn't split in the best terms in the first place. They're all and nasty and armed, all of them. Sometimes it won't be easy talking to them, but you can try. You can try and see how many of them you can gather together, and you get something of a free militia.
And that's, I think, one of the cool things about this example that we're talking about, because it's not, yeah, right, it's not quite a quest, it's a mission, and there's different ways that may go. You may
Hmm.
make you I mean, like we talked about I think a week or two ago, if you want, and I wouldn't recommend it, but you could just pull out your gun and go to war with them right when you walk in and steal their stuff, right? If you wanted to get that, you're like, man, I really like that RPG, maybe I should just kill you and loot it. Go for it. It's going to be a tough fight, and you're going to be killing grannies, so maybe not the best thing to do, but you can totally do that. Or you can try to maybe mend the bad the bad blood between them, and heal them, or maybe just ignore them, or use them for specific things. There's so many different ways those missions can evolve, and those stories can evolve based on what your actions are. I have to imagine that the like the scripting tools and the ways that you actually structure this stuff is really complicated.
It is. Or, I might add, you might actually ignore all that and do nothing and see what happens. I challenge you to do that.
Oh.
There's a third outcome, which is a major outcome. There's a lot to do in the game. And yeah, it's hell to script. We're trying to handle all the outcomes, all the possibilities, and we pretty much did.
Yeah, I
We're
think
challenging our QA team to try and find ways to break the game, and they managed to do that, but in small ways.
Yeah, I feel like, we have an image up there now of just a very small snapshot of some of the scripting tools. I mean, and you can even see when you look at it all the different interjections based on who's with you or what what the perks may be. It adds a lot of dynamics there. And like you said, there's different, and I know we had mentioned this between the both of us on the pre-stream section, but this translates to multiple endings and multiple branches, a lot of different ways that the game can go, and there are like I'd say minor consequences to certain types of actions that you take when you're in a sector, and then there are some actions that have major consequences, and there are a couple like really pivotal story moments where a choice you make can like determine the next big progression point of the story, and that can translate to different endings and different ways that the game progresses. It's a spiritual approach of games from that era that we're really trying to hold on to.
Yes, definitely. And it's not just different endings. We picked another approach, which is, in my opinion, much better. You don't get linear split of endings. You have one ending sequence made of different chains, of different moments that may differ depending on your choices. And some of them are reliant on each other. So they change sometimes. Of course, they change by the end of the game. They are when you put the end, you calculate everything. You checked all the consequences. You get an outro that tells you what happened based on your actions. You change that country. You change those people, and maybe there will be something about you as mercs that changes your future.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to give away too much on that. The whole point is to say there's a lot of different ways that your choices kind of progress the way the story goes. So, the last thing I want to touch on before we bring Bouillon back out for questions, and you had mentioned this a little bit earlier, and we talked about this in the dev diary as well, is the poor QA and the QA process, and you were even hinting that there are some things that are still kind of hinted that maybe the QA haven't found yet. We probably should tell them eventually so they can test everything. But I find it's an interesting approach because there's so many things in there. It must be tricky for the QA to test all of that.
Well, yes, it is. But they have their ways. They, the first thing they do is try to kill everyone and see what happens. They're psychopaths. But also, when I'm
by the way, we
we
should have added a merc that's just called QA, and he has the psychopath. He or she has the psychopath perk, and maybe that's an idea for a DLC merc. Or if anyone wants to turn that into a mod merc, we can call QA the psychopath merc. I love it.
Sounds like the perfect imp merc, actually.
Yeah, perfect. So I didn't mean to cut you
QA.
off.
I'm QA, here to kill everyone. So I'm tasking everything to the QA with the request. Please, guys, try to break it. See if it's understandable to the player. See if something is weird and unexpected, and give it back to me. It might be by design.
Well, I know you may not be seeing chat right now, but I see a lot of chat saying that we should turn you,
No, I can't
Rado,
see.
that we should turn you into a merc. They say you have a very a good merc face, and that we should make you an imp portrait. So, I don't know if we'll do that, but another challenge for the modders out there, if they want to make the Rado merc pack, that would be fun. Yeah, 100%, great merc face, unironically. Maybe the community can convince you to do. You know what? I'll tell you this: if someone did spend the time and effort to write post launch a Rado Merc pack, I may be interested in facilitating Rado doing some VO lines for that. Like we could get a mic and do some Rado voice recording. No,
I have a horrible voice, but I'd try to.
Ah,
That's a great
all right.
honor.
Yeah, the Rado.
In fact, we have one NPC that has the kind of the likes and the character of one of the software developers in the game.
A Rado Merc mod, then Rado and I will collaborate and see if we can get some. If you guys write the dialogue, and it's we'll maybe try to. Does it come with Rado hair care pack? Right. Okay. So I mean, now we're developing. This is the process of creativity, right? Like, what does the Rado Merc care about? Maybe the Rado Merc is into a good hair care, and what else Rado we include in the Rado Merc?
Oh, I don't know, but wait a minute. Let me do the writing. I have some experience. I know that guy.
Rado, you can't write yourself. We have to let the community write Rado from their experiences with you. No?
It will be horrible.
Oh, it'll be great. It'll be great. Anyways, I'm smiling too much. Let's bring Bouillon back out here and answer some questions. Yeah, the community is very adamant. No, we do the writing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Hawk 402, I think, may become the mod organizer. Hawk seems very interested in the Rado mod pack. So we're gonna take some questions. Yeah, well, by the way, Rado, Wolverine says it will be great because it will be horrible. That's the point.
That's the spirit.
We are definitely having a Rado mode now.
Oh no.
Olak says Rado Merc is patient and likes to torture his victims and says, "Hold still while I kill you." Okay.
It checks out.
Yeah. Man. Oh boy, we're going off the deep end here. All right, so let's do some questions. Let me grab some here. Wow, some people really do want quests around the developers. Hawk 402 earlier asked, "Can we have a rescue Pavel quest?"
Oh boy. It's
Okay,
a little
so
bit too
you're
late for that.
Designing a whole new game.
Yes.
It's gonna be a damsel in distress.
Yeah, not quest mission. Yeah, everyone's calling them missions now and not quest because of the way they come across in the thing. By the way, can you guys take a small step back so that we can get both of you in the frame? And maybe.
How about that?
Yes, Rado, you look very tall.
But I'm not.
So, Azray LLHD asked, "Will there be long fights with enemies alongside militia, like in Jagged Alliance 2?"
Okay, yeah, so there's definitely longer fights, and there are some encounters that are a bit more of scripted in a way to have you test it out on a very long fight, like waves of enemies, enemy after enemy after enemy. And definitely when you take a city and defend it with some militia and it gets attacked by the enemy, especially some of the more tougher enemy squads, it's gonna be an epic fight with a lot of enemies and a lot of allies on your side.
Yeah, we actually, and obviously for every turn-based game is a challenge, but we spent some time with some of those larger fights, kind of figuring out the best way to speed up the movements and interactions. We have things like group movement when they're not all engaged, like they're just repositioning themselves. So that was part of some of those larger fights, was exposing the slowness of turn-based games, and there was work done to try to make those feel a little bit better. Um, it's always tricky though, because you get that balance of everyone wanting these large epic scale conflicts, and then also getting fatigued by watching 20 units move and you move 20 units, and finding that balancing act can be really tricky.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
sorry, good.
Yeah, it's definitely a big challenge, especially when you have a lot of enemies and it's their turn and you have to keep track of what happened. It could
Yeah.
be a bit confusing, but we spent a lot of time trying to get the camera to follow along and make sure that you see everything that's happening in the fight.
It's also worth mentioning, because I think we've shown this in other videos, and it comes off when you look at, if you're really kind of paying attention to the details. But you can control more than one squad, and you also can bring more than one. I think we limit it to two total, but you can bring more than one squad. You can't do three, can you? Can you bring three
You
squads to a
can,
fight?
you don't have actually a limit to number of squads. You have a limit to how many mercs you can hire. So it's
Oh, that's what I'm trying.
quite a lot. So you can have like 10 squads with one merc in each squad if you want. I wouldn't
Right,
recommend doing that, but you
right,
could try.
okay. But basically, the summary is that you can even combine squads in one combat encounter to bring more
Yeah.
than a squad's max number of units there. Um, I think I always hit the limit because I would fully set up my squads pretty big, so I probably hit it earlier than that. Another comment here. Suppose PPO 80 asked earlier, are the possible online features released yet or talked about yet? The online component for Jagged Alliance 3 is really about co-op. We haven't talked about the details for co-op yet, aside from that you can have players or have your friend come into your session and control a set number of mercs that the host gets to define. We'll probably do a stream where we talk about the co-op in more details later on, and maybe Bouillon and I or someone can do a co-op match and play it during the stream. But yeah, it's gonna be. Well, I don't want to get too distracted diving into the details of co-op in in the question and answer session, because there's a lot to talk about there. But there is cool co-op, and you'll be able to play it with your friends. Let's see. Okay, so you asked, are there perk checks? Are there also skill and attribute checks?
Does the bear go to poop in the forest? Of course. Of course they are. In the conversations.
Oh, okay. So for all of those on the Team Rado mod, that's gonna
Sorry.
have to be a line of dialogue.
Oh no! Oh, no.
Please make sure that we add the Rado phrases into the mod. Sorry. So the answer, I think what he was saying was
Yes. Definitely
yes.
yes. Both in interactions with scripted interactions with banter NPCs and in conversations. There are skill checks, there are perk checks. They're usually boiled down to skills, which are numerical. So if you have more wisdom or more strength or whatever, you can do a thing. But the point is, and that's interesting, we tried to make things immersive, to keep them immersive for the player. And in the conversation, you'll get information that there is a possible skill check here, and you need leadership. And the highest leadership in your party right now is like 40. And Buns has Len has 40 or 50 leadership, and you're like, okay, but will I succeed with 40 or 50 leadership in this situation? Will I click this? And what happens then? Because if you fail, there will be some minor negative consequences. If you succeed, you will get some reward, probably. And sometimes even the skill or perk check will lead to something that you didn't expect, especially with psychomercs.
There's also there's interesting like we try to be very careful about how much we balance those kind of skill check RPG moments because
Mm,
it's a double-edged sword.
mm,
And one aspect it's really exciting to see like, oh, I have the right thing and I get to experience this,
mm,
or unlock this or whatever. There's also that kind of FOMO experience where you're worried, oh, I don't have the right mercs in the right situations, and that kind of makes you try to min max a little bit. So it's a balancing act on how we do those elements. But there are quite a few, like even in the very beginning of the game, there are some like as an example, there are some mechanic skill checks for both a few very minor but kind of story building interactions with NPCs, as well as things like breaking down a broken down Jeep for supplies, or there's a ability to skill check gathering herbs from bushes or whatever. So we have a couple different elements of that come in there. And yeah, you're right. It definitely adds replayability. It's there. What I'm saying is when we're going through the design process of it, it can be natural to try to add a whole bunch of those things in, and we tried to balance it out so that no matter what build you have, there's still different options for you to experience and fun for you to have. So it's a balancing act. Another question I saw here from Hawk402. I'm gonna take one or two more questions before we call it. Actually, hold on. I need to take a question from the forums. There's one in there I wanted to take. Um, and this actually is a good. So Hawk402 asked a question about what is the tone or tones you are going for? Were you going for more of a 90s action movie tone, or for like a more depressing movie about war and aftermath tone? I don't think there's a question I think is also similar from and I always print them out from the dev diary. Solaris Wave asked, "I'm curious as to how the NPCs in Grand Chien perceive your mercs. Do they see your soldiers as a chance to change their lives for the better, changing the governing body of the country, or do they see them as a bunch of opportunists looking to exploit the war-torn country for their own personal gain?" I think that it's a little bit of both, honestly. I think you see both interactions from different places that you go and different people you interact with.
Yeah, there's definitely some mistrust initially, but
mm.
uh,
Shortest answer is yes to all the options, because yeah, they don't know much about you. You're just people with guns, but they might take you for someone else. No spoilers, no spoilers. Also, they they might like you in some areas and dislike you in others. And of course, different people's opinions differ. And when you start playing and you start doing things in the world, people will react to that. There will be conspiracy theories created about your actions. You did
Yeah,
something, you defeated some enemy, or took some camp that was heavily fortified, and people come up with weird, stupid theories how you did that.
yeah, I think it's interesting too because this is something that you actually run into in the very beginning of the game, and I don't want to get too much in the spoiler territory, but you
Mm.
do hit this in the first hour or so, where you run into a village where some people are actually on the side of the Legion and don't want the president to be found and reinstated. You have some people that are wanting to just be on their own and don't want interference from anybody, and there are some people that are desperate for help and actually believe in the future that Grand Chien can have, and are wanting to understand that you're trying to go there, and are willing to see what you may do to help reinstate the democratically elected leadership. So it's interesting, all these different dynamics that are going on all throughout Grand Chien, and those things are not static. They evolve and change as you take actions, as well as the Legion takes actions in response to you. Like, there's a lot of things that are going on. Someone earlier mentioned the spoiler comment, or the replay comment, and that's, I think, one of the elements that we try to capture is that each replay, obviously the main points are going to be all there, but there's going to be different shades of how those points, both how you get to those points and what happens from those points, based on all those accumulations of actions and how people perceive you and what you've done. And I think a lot of that, and not to like try to embarrass Bouillon or anything, but I think a lot of that comes from people in the team like Bouillon who have played Jagged Alliance 2 over and over and over again for years and years and years, and kind of get that sense of dynamics that help bring that to life as a developer and as a designer. The team has really focused on how best to try to get that accomplished. And it's not an easy task, right? Game development is hard, left alone. It's infinitely harder when you have all these branching stories and branching things, and like Rado showed before, quest writing is complicated and dialogue writing is complicated, and if QA goes in and kills someone and that's a key part of another quest, is you just break the quest, right? It's there's a lot of different elements there, but I think you're going to find that the story's tone is a wide range based on how you decide to interact with it. That's the goal, at least. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, there are stories that show you how miserable this country is, but you have a saying how it goes. And they are just funny stories sometimes. They're crazy stories.
Yeah.
It's a crazy place.
There's definitely this feeling of the 80s, 90s movies as well, action movies as well, when we are exploring the world. And we have some time just let off some having a fun time in some of these stories.
Yeah,
just
and a lot of
so
levity.
it's fun.
We actually have done the humor pass multiple times, like trying to make sure we balance the serious and the funny. And I think you guys all see Rado, right? And also we have the original creators of Jagged Alliance as a franchise with Ian Curry on. So we get some of that dynamics from his writing that comes through. And Ian's a great writer, and you get a lot of that dynamic and personality and the collaboration they've added into the mix. Everyone. Oh, sorry, go ahead, man.
We always said when we are talking about the combat in Jagged Alliance, it's always we are serious. This is a very realistic take on what combat looks like, and it's important to get that. But when we are in the world, we are trying to have fun and trying to, well, I wouldn't say light-hearted, but more of that 90s approach to movies. It's a bit more black and white, and it's a bit more, there are gray elements definitely, but we try to have fun. We try to represent the different aspects of the country and the different power groups inside.
Yep. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us on this stream. We went a little bit long, but I think we had some good questions and a lot of excitement in the chat, so I wanted to give that the time. We are doing more streams. I think we're back here again in 2 weeks, and then soon we're going to be going to every week. So very soon you're going to be seeing us much more frequently. The streams are posted onto the thqnordic Insider YouTube channel, so if you missed it, you can catch it there. Or if you come at the end, you can also watch the VOD here on the channel. Please feel free to join the community site, community.jaggedalliance.com. That's where all of our dev diaries are posted. So we usually do a dev diary for each stream. No t-shirts today, but we'll do t-shirts next time. Next stream we'll do another t-shirt giveaway. We're not doing them every time. We got to mix it up. Yeah, by the way, that's where the community site's probably where the Rado mod team is going to form and recruit new members in preparation for release. Yeah, we'll see you guys in a couple weeks time, and we're always I always try to grab some comments and whatnot, and always read the comments before every stream to try to integrate in some of those questions or tones into the dev stream. So feel free to join and participate there. We hope you're having fun with these streams. It seems like everyone had a good time today, and we hope that we'll get to see all you guys on the next one. It's great seeing so many familiar faces. Rado, it's great to see you as a familiar face. So welcome. Thank you for participating and taking time out of your crazy schedule to chat with us today.
Thank you. It was an honor, and it was fun.
And Buyan, as always, my friend, good to see you.
It's always fun to come here and talk to you and to all of the fans of Jagged Alliance.
Yeah, you guys are all great. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a safe, wonderful rest of weekend, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Cheers.
Bye-bye.